Welcome back, Earthlings. I am Eric Taylor, aka the Extraterrestrial, and I am joined today by a special guest for another Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed video. I am joined by Morganth06 from Twitch. He is my younger brother, but he also has a ton of asymmetrical game experience. He's played thousands, I think, of hours at this point of Dead by Daylight, and a couple hundred hours of VHS and other games similar to that. So he has a whole bunch of asymmetrical game experience. I have very little asymmetrical game experience, but in juxtaposition to that, Morganth has watched Ghostbusters once, where I have hundreds, if not thousands, of hours spent watching Ghostbusters. No, probably not that many, but probably hundreds, not thousands. That would be a lot of times. So we're going to chat about the game. I'm going to get his opinions on asymmetrical gameplay and how it's going to work here in Ghostbusters, where he thinks some of the hangups are, where he thinks some of the strengths are going to lie. And I'm going to bring my 30 plus years of video gaming experience to bear in terms of design discussion and how things fit in flavor-wise with the universe. So we are using the alpha gameplay reveal stream footage from last week, and you're probably not going to hear audio from them. I'm just going to kind of scrub through it. If I think that there's something interesting, maybe we want to hear some audio from them. But again, this was a stream with Aaron, the community manager, and Jordan, the lead designer. So Morganth, let's talk a little bit about this stream. I think we both agreed that the stream was pretty rough.
Yeah, that's an understatement. It was pretty, yeah.
You know, you can tell they were trying. You can tell they have a lot of passion, but the stream could have used a little bit of work, I think.
Yep. I think it would have been a lot better if they had a list of features that they wanted to show, and then they just went through a list, but with like maybe some pre-recorded footage of showing off those features. But that's so. But in the end, I do feel like we got a decent glimpse of the Buster role, and that's interesting to talk about. I do wish that we had seen a little bit about more of the Ghost role, because that's really ultimately what for me as an asymmetrical player, knowing what's going on both sides of the role was very important to be able to determine where the game goes. Because part of the asymmetrical experience that I have found is that in most games is that one side is generally more powerful than the other. But personally, after I've watched the gameplay, the game, specifically the match they did at the very end of the stream. I've watched that match several times. And I can't, it doesn't really feel as if one side is more powerful than the other, which is not a bad thing. It's definitely a different take than what you get on most asymmetrical games. For example, the first real asymmetrical game that I can think of would have been, Evolve. And clearly you had the four hunters versus the monster, and the monster was, clearly supposed to be the more powerful of the two. And that's to make up for the fact that it's one player versus four. Dead by Daylight, you have the killer. VHS, you have the monster. Illfonic's other game one of their other games that they did the Friday the 13th game. You had Jason, who was powerful than all the other the campers. So, but I didn't get the sense here that there was one side that was more powerful than the other. In this game, you would have figured that the Ghost would be more powerful than the four Busters, but I really didn't get that sense watching it. I don't know if you had the same.
I have a back and forth stance on that. I think that there is a possibility that we saw a Ghost intentionally underplayed, just so the Ghostbusters could show off for the stream.
So lost.
I think that they did still lose. I think that like we have talked about off camera, but I think that Illfonic is still playing a lot of cards really close to their chest for one reason or another. And so I think that plays into it a lot. I think that they wanted to show off very specific elements even without a script. And so as a result, I don't think we saw anyone playing at full speed per se. And so one of my struggles with this is I have watched this numerous times to mine for other videos and to mine for discussion and to mine for this particular vodcast, is the idea that we're not really sure how a match is going to play outside of things. I don't know if you saw, I unfortunately didn't get the graphic prepared like I had planned to due to chaos, but they not leaked. They released the information with regards to the achievements / trophies for the game, and a couple of those things gave us a little bit of information that we'll talk about later as we hit certain points. But it does seem like there is probably more balance just based on some of those trophies than we saw in the dev stream. So I'm hoping that it's like that. I do personally, as a non-asymmetric player, this being the first one that I plan to invest a serious amount of time into, I do hope that things are more balanced than certain Dead by Daylight streams I would watch seemed, or than the handful of Evolve games that I watched when I had interest in that seems to be. I do think that there are points in time where it didn't always feel like player skill or teamwork was what was winning matches. It just seemed like the overpowered nature of certain killers or of the beast in Evolve was what was carrying matches. And one of the things about Ghostbusters flavor wise is you want that sense of terror, but it's comedic terror. It's that goofy kind of feeling. And if we had a ghost that was just unbeatable as a thing, I think that'd be a problem. What I did appreciate, and I don't know if you got this same actually, sorry, I'm misspeaking here. One thing that I am concerned about, and I think we need to see more of, is if you look at any of the movies or the cartoon or anything like that, taking down a ghost was a team project. And it very much seemed like getting a ghost in a trap might take a team, but there were points in the stream that I was a little bit nervous because it seemed like you could 1v1 relatively effectively. There were a couple moments where it seemed like Jordan was able to get a lasso on the ghost and keep the ghost kind of locked out for a little while, and I don't personally feel like that should be how it plays. I feel like the ghost should be a substantial danger if you're alone. You know, the scene in the first Ghostbusters where they're in the hotel and Peter runs into Slimer in the hallway and has the big huge freak out and, you know, get the and Ray comes running down and he's just laying there, oh, he slimed me. Like, I feel like that's how it should play in the game. The ghost should be dangerous for one buster.
That's fair.
And I didn't get that impression.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's fair. I think there's also, with asymmetric games, there's a few things to keep in mind. Is that the general idea of the asymmetric games that is that eventually for example, with if we use Dead by Daylight, which is the game that I've played the most, if we use Dead by Daylight as an example, the killer comes and chases you. One person runs off, but the rest of the team has to continue doing something. The rest, for Dead by Daylight, the rest of the team has to continue doing the generators. In this instance, for Ghostbuster Spirits Unleashed, what I would imagine is that if the spirit if the ghost is dealing with one of the busters, the other three busters have to continue to be able to do things such as take down rifts, calm civilians, and so to a degree, yeah, I think I agree with you. The ghost should be a threat to a singular buster, but at the same time, a singular buster has to be able to hold his ground enough that the rest of the team can continue to do other objectives. Because if the entire team has to focus their effort on dealing with the ghost all at one time, then other objectives the other objectives in the game get ignored. Uh, the civilians won't get calmed, and they'll flee the area, and that will cause the haunting to go up, or rifts won't get destroyed. And so, that I agree. To a certain degree, the ghost needs to be threatening to a singular buster, but at the same time, for the sake of balance, a singular buster needs to be able to hold their ground somewhat, so that way the rest of the team can continue to do objectives.
Right. I guess my counter question is, if you look at the Dead by Daylight example, the roles are kind of swapped, right? To an extent. Your dangerous person is the one who's somewhat running and hiding. Your dangerous person is the one who's trying to, there are no gens, right? Or anything like that. You're attempting to, and we didn't see it because we didn't get any gameplay from the ghost perspective, but you're haunting things and you're spooking civilians and you're doing those kind of things. And so my concern is where, yes, the busters have this handful of things they've got to do, where it's, take down rifts and calm civilians. Although in the game we watched, I didn't see that happening a whole ton. So I do have curiosity how vital of a mechanic that's going to be. Hopefully it's somewhat important, but it didn't seem super important in the game we watched.
I think we can look at we had the game, but then we also had their game where they were just demonstrating things. Mm-hmm. And in that game, the haunt was going up ridiculously fast. Like, they had to pause it at 75% because it just was going up so quickly, because the busters weren't doing anything to interfere with the ghost. Mm-hmm. And the ghost was just running around and doing things. Right. He was that off camera that we weren't seeing. And so I do think, and obviously I don't, the haunting went much slower in the actual game we watched, mm-hmm. Where they actually made an attempt to play the game.
Yeah, for sure. It looks like they got to 75% in I don't know, 8-ish minutes of just kind of standing and talking.
Yeah.
So there's some of that. I'm going to just let this kind of play in the background while we talk, and if we see anything that seems fairly interesting, we can discuss it. But my concern for everything remains the idea that if the buster is having to if the ghost is having to do this plethora of things, they're having to worry about their respawn rifts constantly. They're having to haunt. They're having to spook civilians. All of those things. But a singular buster can lock them down. It doesn't seem like it takes very long for a couple of busters to burn a rift. It doesn't, the calming mechanic, and obviously we don't have our hands on it. We haven't tried. But it kind of looked like the window to be successful was even larger than a skill check window was for a Dead by Daylight game. So,
those little markers on the call me wheel mm-hmm. were just to make it extra effective. It was, that's all it was to give a little bit of extra resistance. Right. They say that.
Right. So I think it'll be interesting. I hope that it's balanced. I hope that. I like with these kind of games when it feels kind of like it's balanced on a knife's edge rather than when it goes fast. I think that the tension is part of what makes these games interesting compared to
exactly
a stomp. I did chat with someone when we were doing it. We didn't really get a chance to see. I don't remember that we did, at least seeing a Buster get downed and having to self revive. Everybody always had a revive help at some point, and it was the same. I give you a air massage mechanic that comes from Dead by Daylight. There is no perma down on Busters.
Yeah, which
is that concerning?
To me, that is, because particularly if the ghost is not the strong, particularly if the two sides seem extremely well balanced, and the ghost doesn't really have any significant power over the Busters. That's extremely concerning because sometimes in a match of Dead by Daylight, being able to get, or even VHS or other games that I've played, getting one of the opposing team out of the match could be the difference between winning and losing. But if you just have a Buster where the Buster just goes down and they're down for 30 seconds and they can make themselves stand back up, you're never giving yourself a significant advantage that comes with being able to have one of the players removed from the match. I guess to go with my limited Ghostbusters experience, that in Ghostbusters, none of the Busters ever led and were out of the the busting of the ghost. But to me, that's very concerning because being able, because that's a key strategy in most asymmetric games, being able to remove one of the other the opposing team. So that way you can have an advantage and have a little bit of break too. It's like, okay, one less person has to be worrying about doing something else.
Yeah, I think I would have been interested to see how long downstate is when you're by yourself, right? If you have to bring yourself up versus have a friend show up to revive you. If there's a substantial time period there, that might kind of alleviate that. I also feel like if you get downed multiple times, maybe there's some sort of, I've been downed 3 times in this match, I'm down longer, right? My respawn is longer. And so I think that might aid with some of our mutual concern about the lack of that, because the ghost has limited lives to an extent, right? Your ghost is your ghost can respawn perpetually as long as there's rifts open, but the minute those rifts are gone, and like we mentioned just a few minutes ago, the rifts don't seem that hard to take out.
No, not at all.
They seem fairly easy to get a hold of and take out. Now I know the ghost can move them and the ghost can hide them and all those kind of things, so maybe it's harder than we're thinking. But especially in a world where a ghost can make the tactical decision to pop a rift to generate a whole bunch of haunt, which seems to be the mechanic, I do have to wonder how having Ghostbusters and Get Up, and I in flavor 100%, ranging from the movies down to any version of a Ghostbusters tabletop. You don't die in Ghostbusters. That's not a thing. So I'm not looking for a ghost to be able to, gack a Ghostbuster. But I do think there needs to be some kind of gameplay mechanic of it takes you longer to get up, or you're at reduced effectiveness, or it slows down your recharge, or whatever, right? Because essentially you've been slimed. That's the concept. When you see them go down, the screen's got all the slime on it, they're down in the puddle of slime, and I think that there needs to be some kind of gameplay there. So right here in where we're looking, this is something I wanted to talk about. Just watch here how easy it seems for Aaron to get. Watch how that green bar on the left. Watch how fast that bar builds, because it is not very long to
No,
get a
it is
lock.
not.
And I don't, obviously we don't know what kind of, and yes, you got to vent your pack, but if you got 3 people in there alternating back and forth, and or even 2 people, you're probably not going to really actually have that hard time keeping a ghost locked in. And that'll be interesting. I imagine there's some kind of evasion tactics that the ghost has, or those kind of things.
Yeah, I think it goes back to kind of the two things, two of the things that we said. One, my concern that it doesn't really seem like one side has the power advantage over the other, and 2, it doesn't seem, I'm not convincing you. Said you're not convinced that we saw Ghost playing optimally. So maybe because we know the Ghost has different abilities that they could use to hopefully be able to get out, such as spawning their minions or dumping a bunch of slime on the ground. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. If I think that I would like to see a game where you had 5 people come in and they played off.
Play to win, yeah.
They play to win. You have because that's what it's going to be in any asymmetric game. You have your spectrum of players. You have on one spectrum, on the end of the spectrum, you have the players who are there to just goof off and do silly things. And on the other spectrum, you have the tryhards who are going to do anything it takes to win. I would like to see a game on the tryhard spectrum where we actually see how the game is supposed to be played at its best.
Yeah, I think something, just as I've been listening and I've been thinking about the stream, something to note is right before they go and do that capture, that grapple attempt, right? The ghost does, as you mentioned, pop its minion cooldown. And they do mention at one point during the stream that ghosts have an energy bar to use their cooldowns, and how hiding in objects and things makes it so your energy regens faster. I have to wonder if mechanically having higher energy gives you a higher resistance to being being wrapped, and maybe because they threw their energy out so quick to do their big minion cooldown, maybe that becomes a thing that that's why it was so easy. So we'll have to hold out and see there. Let's talk a little bit. I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit here to the game where they're actually trying, and we're just gonna go through. I think we've covered some of our just basic thoughts, and I think unless there's something else you want to talk about that you had thought, I think we should just go through this kind of quick game and just react live to what's happening.
Most of my thoughts were about the game itself. That's the part that I watched the most.
Okay.
So
But that's fine. Social space.
So if I actually back up just a little bit, there's a point that I wanted to make right before they actually start the game. We can go to the pre-game lobby. I want to look at their levels, which I think is an important thing to look at.
Okay.
So if you just a few more seconds, I think, few more seconds. Sorry, in the pre-game lobby before they've even booted it up.
Here, okay.
Yeah, started the game. Yeah, in the social space, I guess.
So here.
Yeah, so I think it's important to look here and note that we clearly have 2 people. We have Carell, I think. I don't know what his name was actually, and then Thorn. Carell, is level 45 and Thorn is level 28. I also really don't like that purple font.
No,
that purple
that's
color
bad.
Level makes it hard to see, but But anyway, level 45 and level 28. So clearly we have 2 people who have vastly more experience than the people who are actually showing off the gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important to note here. That
They both played the ghosts each time, though.
Yeah, and they both played the ghosts each time. Yep. So we definitely were not seeing optimal gameplay from those 2 people.
Right. Well, at least not based upon the metrics that we are seeing, for sure.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible that, like, Illfonic Joe only has 4 levels on this account, but actually has 10,000 testing hours, right? Like we don't necessarily. I admit I wish that they had introduced who was on their team.
Yes.
Even if we didn't get to talk to them for a minute or hear their voices, I was okay with that. But I do think being like, hey, and we're joined by, Carell, who is blah, 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 and he is, XYZ job on the game, and that would explain the level range there. I also, obviously, a level range is going to illustrate I have spent X amount of hours playing this game. If we see, once the game launches live, if you end up in a lobby and you're like, oh man, I'm a level 4 because I've been playing this game for like a week because we don't know how fast it is to level. This guy's level 61, right? Obviously, that's going to be a problem for you. So I'm hoping...
which is why most asymmetric games don't show levels, because they don't want you getting psyched out by that.
Yeah.
Which I think Illfonic is something that Illfonic should keep in mind. Obviously, it's fine to show your levels when you are
the beta tester, the
beta tester. Well, you're in a beta tester, or if you're in a group with your friends, that's fine because you understand where everyone's at. But I think if you
this is the social space. This isn't.
This is the social. That's true.
So it is possible that when they go in, because this didn't appear to have, and we're gonna jump forward again here. This is all that their loading screen is. There's nothing here that's showing, unless it's hidden behind Jordan or Aaron's head, right? There's nothing here showing even who's in your game or what level they are. I like this. I like the come inside, get your little cinematic, open up our stuff, charge everything up. That's pretty cool. I still, to this day, struggle with the human models, but the ghosts look amazing, the environments look amazing, the humans are rough for me.
And that's kind of forward. I think it has to fit.
That was. We'll pause here in just a second. He's gonna hit a button.
Just the briefest of flashes.
Yeah, and of course I can't.
If we can even get it to pull up.
My media. I'm not good at this. There we go. Yep, and I missed it.
Yep, it did show the levels and stuff.
And so, but the question is that who's in my party, or is that actually like a score tracker, right? I mean, you weren't stepping away from asymmetrical games for a minute. There was a button in Smite for a long time that brought up your T screen, and there was a controversy for a while where they took it away because it was giving information that was making it so you were learning information that you wouldn't otherwise have. So it's interesting to me that you can be calming civilians from minute 1. I don't know how I feel about the fact that the Haunt's only at 3%, the Ghost hasn't interacted with the civilian at all, but we're essentially giving an overshield to the civilian.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I don't. We see later that the shield really doesn't last that long. We do see that later when he sits and he did to the point where he's seen actually watching the civilian and the shield, and it may have been earlier in the other play. But the shield really doesn't last overly long, it feels like. So to me, that's not a big deal, because lore-wise, if you were to look at it from a lore perspective, someone had to call the Ghostbusters to be here. So clearly, the haunting has started. People are going on. So someone had to call. People are probably aware that something weird's going on. But so to me, it doesn't bother me that much because the shield doesn't seem to last that long. If the shield lasted like a good solid 30 seconds, even, I would agree with you. But it doesn't last. It doesn't last that long, at least from what I watched.
We saw. Okay, so how do we feel about this? How do we feel about the traversal mechanic? Because I have differing opinions on it. One of the ghosts, and I mentioned it in my PKE video, which you should watch if you haven't, people who are watching this, is one of the ghost strengths is their 3-dimensional traversal space, their ability to fly and float around, and appears like pass through walls. There's a moment in the stream later where Thorn, who's playing the ghost, goes through the wall.
So
is it a problem that the busters can just zip up to the next level almost as quickly as the ghost?
So here are my thoughts on that. One, what Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed has going for it is that no other asymmetrical game that I'm aware of and that I've played, and I've played a lot of them, pretty much all of them that I'm aware of, has that three-dimensional movement. Sure, you may have different layers and levels, but you're not moving three-dimensionally. You're still moving two-dimensionally. You have to go upstairs if you want to go. So the fact that that's interesting to me in general. That's just a whole different challenge to have to confront, is the fact that you can move. The only example I can think of would be the nurse from Dead by Daylight, but the nurse is able to move through walls and stuff like the ghost, and and the purpose of the nurse moving like that is to, and be able to move through things and move through layers, is to be able to help with the catch-up mechanic, because the nurse doesn't move quickly in Dead by Daylight. And so I don't know. I think that we'll have to see, because that three-dimensional movement that you have here is another unique challenge that Illfonic has to deal with, has to balance around. So I think personally that the busters need to be able to move, not necessarily as quickly as the ghost, but they do need to be able to do the same kind of move, be able to get up to another layer, pretty quickly. The ghost's advantage is that it can pass through walls and stuff, so it's not like the busters can chase through. They have to go find some place. Like, I need to get up there. The ghost just went through the roof and is now up on the next level. I have to go find a balcony or a ledge or something that's actually open and available for me to use my VAD, vertical ascension device, as they called it, to get up there. Right. So I do think that's important. I think the balancing factor of this is that unlike the ghost that can just move through the wall, the busters have to go find some place where they can actually.
Yeah. And so I think it's going to be hook point dependent for sure. I also am remembering, and you can see it here on the right hand side of the screen, it's triggered by his X button. I'm just going to state right now, I certainly hope we can rebind keys. Some of these key binds look terrible. But it's an equipment slot, and we didn't get to see all the equipment. We don't know what they've all got. We saw the PKE, we saw the grapnel, we saw the trap, and we saw the particle thrower. We don't know what else is there, but it takes up your equipment slot. And so what are you giving up in order to be able to do that? Like we mentioned, I did that PKE video and we talked about the PKE walls. I want to talk about how overpowered PKE balls seems. So
I think we're actually going to get a good example.
Right here. This is a big example right here. So in this clip that we're about to watch, they have located the relic that's hiding one of the rifts. And so just watch. So there's the spotting mechanic, which seems to be point related. I think it's very interesting. I would like to know if that's automatic or if that's something that he's having to trigger.
I'd imagine that it's something he has to trigger.
Yeah. Because there are a couple of times where it's just like, and if it's like every time I'm mousing over something, it's going to be a little bit annoying, but you apparently get points for it. We'll discuss maybe how much we just need to know what those points are for. As a thing. Yeah. But so right here, he's going to point it out. No shots go off, and look at how much that chunks that relic as a thing. That is a lot of damage. And yes, his pulse is going to go on cool. His pulse, his PKE are down for 30 seconds based on the timing that I did when I watched. But that's so much damage. And again, this raises my concern of a Buster being able to just solo stuff.
Mhm.
You know, I don't necessarily know that I like the fact that this can be used in this fashion. I like that it can break up the ghost mobs a lot. I wouldn't mind if it could do damage to the rift itself. Obviously not that much damage. If it chunks a
Yeah.
rift itself for half, we've got a problem. I don't know that I like the fact that overloading it damages the physical environment. I have personal concerns about that. But so with that singular pulse, and there's a second pulse, two pulses, one from each buster, it breaks the object completely, and now we've got a rift. And so Rift has come up. He's not done a ton of damage yet, but we're just gonna watch how long this rift takes to burn with one buster shooting this rift as a thing. So here comes the ghost, and they're gonna do the battle for the ghost. But I mean, it's taken a little bit of time.
Yeah, and this kind of goes to my point that I was trying to make earlier, that he needed to be able to wrangle the ghost so that way his teammate could continue to do the other task. If he was by himself, I don't think that he would have been able to pull that off, because the ghost had to choose to divide his attention. Am I going after the guy that's trying to come after me, or am I going after the guy that's going after my rift?
And somewhere, and we don't get to see what happens here, but the ghost noped. Right.
Yeah, ghost is gone. No idea where they went.
Right. The ghost came out, dropped minions, left, and to the credit, now there was a lot going on, but Jordan wasn't able to just entangle that ghost immediately like it seemed like he could downstairs. But so the ghost noped out, and then in the time period here of Jordan, so they're burning that rift quick, and it appears that the more people hitting it, the more damage people do. Yeah. Period. So it's not just you got multiple DPSers on it, but also you seem to get some kind of stacking damage the more beams are on, which I personally think is lame, but I also think should only happen if you're crossing the streams. If you're crossing the streams, I think it would be fine. But I think it needs to be a positioning thing. I think there needs to be some kind of risk involved. Otherwise, to me, and obviously we haven't seen enough gameplay, this seems like it's too easy to do. I also want to know if rifts regenerate for the ghost. If the ghost came in here, risked it all, stole his rift, and went and hit it again, is the rift going to regen or not? But, so in this time, something, I don't recall what goes on, but Jordan bails here, and in the time frame that he turns his back and walks away, Joe goes down.
Yeah, I would have loved to see what caused Joe to go down. You know, we a brief, in that brief spin around that we have, we see a big purple cloud of something. So I imagine the ghost maybe popped up, slimed, and we see that.
Something happens there. Joe goes down. Yeah.
So it looks like there's a bunch of spirits going around, spinning around the ghost, kind of like a whirlwind thing.
Yeah, it looks like Ghost Blade Storm, right? Yeah. But so interesting point here. So Joe goes down, and this leads to our idea that the expenditure of energy may influence how easy they were to trap, because the ghost came in, having been off doing haunting and whatever, not seeming to expend energy, threw down those spirits and nopes out. My guess is whatever this swirl is, I think they call it the Ghost Ultimate at another point in the earlier stream. So the ghost has come in and ulted, and watch how fast this bar fills.
Yeah. And I actually, and I don't know, I think what Jordan did here is actually really good. Mm-hmm. Jordan hid behind the wall out of sight of the ghost, and lulled the ghost into a false sense of security, and the ghost started floating over here, and the ghost, and was clearly moving his rift is what he's doing right now. But so I to me as an asymmetrical player, that was just a brilliant move. Because clearly Jordan had an understanding of the mechanic enough that the ghost was maybe low on energy and needed, and because of that, and Jordan took advantage of it. And I don't know, I thought that would, as an asymmetrical player, that was a great move.
Yeah, it was a solid play for sure. But I want to point out a couple of things here as we go. So he's hitting the rift. He's going to take off and hide. Bam, there's the ult that takes down the guy. He comes around. This bar fills up super fast. And we see down here, rift fumble. Okay, so apparently he doing enough damage to the ghost while he's carrying the rift causes the rift to drop. And based on what Thorn does, who's playing the ghost, Thorn doesn't seem able to just instantly pick it up and go again. So it must put it on some kind of internal cooldown to do it. But I do like that Jordan has to put away his particle thrower to toss that trap. But at this point, Thorn is, and that's this thing, is the rift's down and Thorn's got to make a choice. Do I make a play for this rift knowing that I'm low and Jordan just threw a trap, or do I bail? And so he bails, so that gives him the chance to recover his trap, and I think that's going to be an interesting mechanic. I'm hoping we only get one, and I'm hoping if you lose it, you ain't got it, right? If you throw it and a ghost pushes you out and you run and you don't remember where your trap is, I'm hoping it's just gone. Right?
I agree with that. You have to go back and get your trap. I agree with that. I think that would be an interesting.
But so obviously energy regen is something, because right here he comes around and redrops the dudes. And so Jordan's going to do overpowered pulse from heck, right? And just destroy everything. And unfortunately, it doesn't appear like in that time Thorn's able to get the rift back, right? Because I had thought if I were the ghost, that's what I would have done. Is you come in, everybody's got to turn their attention to those dudes, because the only thing that seems to insta-gack them is the pulse. It takes a couple of hits, a couple of seconds from the particle thrower. And so I'm a little bit surprised the rift doesn't get picked up. But now they're just going to nuke this rift down. And actually, I want to countermand something that I'm talking about. Earlier, as I remember, they do mention in another part of the stream, now that I recall, that as you're doing damage to the rift, you will start to see fractures on the rift, and those are crit spots. And so that I don't think it's 3 people hitting it made it so that he's doing more damage. I think that he just lined up on the crit spot.
That makes sense. And so going to the regen, the energy regen, maybe my thought process is maybe different abilities cost different amounts of energy. So maybe the minions is the lowest amount of energy that costs, and then the slime is a medium, and then your ultimate is you have to have like your entire bar filled. And so my thought process is that he managed to get away long enough to get minions spawned, and he came back and spawned the minions, because that's how much energy he had. But he unfortunately didn't seem to make much of a difference, because the pulse is a little overpowered.
Yep. So let's talk for a second while we wait for. So he's gonna do this calming. And so that there's a question, I guess, before we talk a little bit about the collectibles, like I was gonna talk about. Now, yes, the fight was not in LOS of this particular civilian, but the fight was right above their head. There was the sound, there was the breaking of glass, there was all that. Her bar is not very high.
No, it's not. She's like, oh, there's explosions and stuff going on over my head. I'm fine.
Yep. So that was a thing. That was a problem for me. And you're right. This shield seems to have, A, it's not fully charged, but B, it does have a reasonable-ish amount of decay, it seems. I still don't know if I think it's fast enough. Obviously, we don't know how many face colors there are. But, and then, of course, Aaron just gacked that civilian. Like, that wasn't something I noticed in the stream, but I mean, he just straight up atomized her, which is...
And got rid of the shield, and got rid of,
Which is, I mean, she's just gone. She's just toast. Like...
I think she ran. I think if you Jordan wasn't looking at her. I'm pretty sure. Oh yeah, she's right. If you just go forward, yeah, you see her. She's no longer blue. She's now yellow because she's scared. But she runs off. Oh no, that's a different civilian. It might have been a different civilian.
No, she went off there to the left. You see it for just a second.
Just a second. So yeah, she's not dead, but she ran off.
Yeah. And he'll shoot here. Go ahead.
And this is just my point of I want to see 5 people who are taking the game as seriously as possible come in and play the game, because the game clearly wasn't being taken as seriously as it could have, which is fine. Most of your games, I don't think will be like this. Most games in asymmetric, you're not playing with, not everyone is taking the game as seriously as possible, which is fine. That means, if every match was a sweaty, try-hard match, that would not be fun. But again, I really would love to see a game where everyone was playing the best they could.
Mm-hmm. So there's another artifact that's been discovered, and they're gonna handle it. Jordan goes down to. I thought he was gonna call him, but he decides not to.
I think he's trying to point it out to because this one didn't have a marker. It didn't get the marker above it.
Right.
There we go. Now it has the marker above it, because I don't think the rest of his team.
No,
I don't think. Yeah.
I mean, even without the pulse, right? That artifact went down like nothing.
Well, that's the interesting thing. I think I think it depends on the size of the artifact. It's in a small artifact, and so it will get destroyed pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious, is there a size limit that you can hide because, for example, I think it'd be unfair to hide it in the whale or the stegosaurus right there that's going to take forever to destroy. So I wonder if there's a size limit to what you can hide your rift in. But and he chooses to respawn, his rift right there. But so that's my curious. It's dependent on the size of the object and how quickly it gets destroyed.
Yeah, and so and we have seen. So we made a comment earlier that we may actually be being proven wrong here. Which is, we commented that the ghost has unlimited respawns as long as a rift is alive, and I actually don't think that's true.
I don't think that's the case, because he respawning here destroyed his rift.
Yeah, so we see up top, if you watch up top right, that one rift has turned yellow, which I don't think is the rift that they've discovered. That I think is the rift that we later learned Thorn is overloading, which seems to be some amount of haunt buildup, right? So it says rift destroyed, the rift has been destroyed, 1 remain. Comes across your screen. Thorn detonates that rift. We find it gets discussed. We don't know what that means, but it does result in some pretty rapid haunt, so it's kind of a risk-reward seeming play. Yep. And there was, if I recall correctly, on the leaked achievements list, triumphs list or whatever, that there was win a match where you detonate all 3 of your rifts yourself. So, that's the thing. So they're gonna jump in here and they're gonna start blowing this up, and Thorn's gonna come defend it. But I want to watch this rift's health very closely, because it definitely seems like Thorn shows up on the ghost, and this rift is still, not in great shape, but still, that civilian should be dead. She just ran through a particle beam. So here's Thorn. He blows minions and then just gets instantly railed on here. Trap goes out. That rift is not quite at half. Rift used. The ghost is remanifesting and it blows. So we're not correct. I wasn't correct. You didn't say it, but I was not correct. And I think this is actually just something from marketing material and pre-release interviews from various, IGN and those kind of places that maybe has either changed or was misreported or whatever. But apparently you've only got 4 lives as it goes.
And that's interesting, because I don't know, maybe there's no evidence to this, but my thought, what I think would be the cooler and better way to do that is that instead of it instantly, when you respawn, instead of it instantly destroying your rift, it only takes a portion of your, maybe 50% of the rift away, so that we still have some more respawns. Maybe that's the mechanic. Again, there's no proof of that. I think that'd be a cool mechanic. I think better instead of only having 4 lives, but That's
I
just my
think,
thought
yeah,
process.
I think it's going to lead to some interesting strats if you live in a world, if we discover that actually just downing a ghost, right, burns a rift, you might just have a group that just, you know, Zerg rushes ghosts.
Yeah.
And
Which,
and if that turns out to be the way it is, that might be less fun.
yeah, I feel like you need, to be, and one, to be consistent with the rest of the asymmetrical genre, but also like from a gameplay standpoint, in my opinion, I feel like you need to go take out the rifts. In Dead by Daylight, you have to go to do generators. In VHS, you have to craft the weapons. You can't just sit there and focus on another aspect. Now, to be fair, these games don't have the number of objectives that Spirits Unleashed seems to have. So, yeah, to me personally, maybe my opinion would change playing the game, but from my experience, you need to do the rifts to be, and take out the rifts in order to actually be able to defeat the ghost. If you instead just focus your attention on dealing with the ghosts, you shouldn't win. That's my opinion.
And I agree. I think that the concept of the cross rip in the canonical lore and those kind of things, that in order to deal with Gozer in the first one, they had to zap the portal thing with the cross streams in order to bring it down, all of those kind of things.
I just noticed. So back up a second. It's at 64%. It was at 40%. It jumped from the haunt. Sorry, I was just watching that. I just noticed it. I apologize for interrupting.
No, that's fine.
It jumps.
Yeah, so we're at 37 here, and so he detonated earlier, and he didn't get a big spike when he detonated. So maybe there's some kind of it does.
Maybe it's just
maybe there's a
increases
cooldown.
it.
Yeah, maybe it increases the speed or whatever. But I don't see what Thorn is doing.
Yeah,
he's not calming. So we're at 39. They're all at Thorn here. I don't know what Jordan was doing there exactly.
Thorn goes up there, and Thorn does something. And I really want to know what he just did.
Yeah, because we go from 39 right here. He goes up. Nobody takes shots at him. He goes into that area, and we go from 40 to 64 in a second. And so there's something happening, and Jordan makes the comment. And so I'm actually going to unmute the stream here. Copyright gods, please help me. Illfonic, I'm trying to promote your game. Please don't copyright strike me again. But so let's back up here for a second.
Oh. Who just dropped down those?
Oh, watch out. We're too grouped up. We are too grouped up.
So we're going to pause for a second. I appreciate that statement. The fact that running that clumped is bad, right? Yeah. Because, as easy as it appears to be to burn down rifts solo, it's super fast when you're burning them together. It's super easy to get them hooked when you're together. I appreciate that the idea that the ghost is arguably more dangerous to a whole crew than they are to one person.
So, because and just thinking about that, if you're clumped up and just
it's that Blade Storm ultimate.
You use Blade Storm ultimate, slime, whatever, you knock them all down and they have time until self-revive. That's enough time for you to pick up your rift and move it somewhere else, and then you have to find
or whatever other mechanic the ghost is doing, right?
Exactly. Whatever happens right here, go do that.
Yeah.
Spreading out.
I just saw him using.
So we don't get any notification on screen of what goes on. And he doesn't say anything, but let's keep listening and see if Jordan tells us.
We're at 50%.
Joe, would you get out of the way? I see it. Oh crap! No. I just jumped right up into minions.
A civilian fled back was another chunk. A small chunk, but
it was only like 5% or something.
I just jumped
right up. It was only 5%, but that's still a chunk.
Yeah.
Well, that just means he's a professional ghost. He set the trap up for you.
Okay. I just also demonstrated another thing I forgot to mention
that-
was slime
Is that
clearing.
you? It is you.
And it did another jump. It did another
was,
huge, massive jump right there.
Yeah, and I don't know what he did. And,
And
I'm hoping he'll say something, because I remember he makes a comment about setup, but I'm trying to remember what he said.
There's a ghost in a sign.
Okay, so
I
Thorn has
couldn't tell if-
obviously. He's seriously just like focused. So when you
He's in a
you
chair.
haunted
He's in
some
a chair.
rooms-
Thorn
haunted some
focus. He
rooms.
haunted some rooms.
I don't like that this is gonna be down to the wire now.
So okay, so what it seems to be, and again, we don't know, so take everything
Yeah.
with a grain of salt, audience. But what it seems to be is you go and you haunt a room, and that room seems to have, and we don't, maybe the ghost can see it, but we can't see it as a buster. The room seems to have an internal haunt-o-meter, right? And the room gets haunted. And as we can see, he's out here in Tutankhamun's lobby, and there's the slime everywhere because this room is fairly haunted. And we saw in the earlier stream, you had all the random particles floating around and all of that. But apparently, a room becoming fully haunted, again, taking with a grain of salt, seems to be a big chunk.
And that's interesting.
I
think,
can't.
because it looked just thinking out loud. Yeah, that would it seems like that would encourage the ghosts to not just hang out in one spot. Obviously, that would make it one easy for busters to find you, but also like you want to be moving around. But if you can try to hover around, I don't know.
I think it'll be interesting to see what does haunting entail, how much work does it take, how long does it take.
Doesn't seem to take very long.
No. Well, I mean, but we don't know when he started that. He could have started those haunts in those rooms at the very beginning of the game.
You could just be completing them right now. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So, and of course we should be looking for the ghost, but we're going to randomly destroy everything rather than look for the ghost, despite the haunt being at 99%. Now, here's what I want to know. How do we feel about this?
Does that get smaller? I don't want it. I don't remember. Like if you let it run for a few more seconds. No, it just sits there in your
sits
face.
there. So not only the visual
that.
aspect, which I hate,
I hate it.
but I'm asking about the gameplay mechanic. The ghost has successfully haunted the building to the point that it is 100% haunted. Why do we now have 90 seconds to still beat this ghost?
Here just general thoughts. In most asymmetric games, there's looking at Dead by Daylight as the prime example of an asymmetric game because that's what it is at this point. That's what they're competing against. There's always a last minute. I can change my fate, kind of. For example, Dead by Daylight, one survivor's left, the hatch spawns. The survivor then has the opportunity to go through the hatch. And of course, the killer then has the opportunity to close the hatch as well. In Home Sweet Home Survive, which is another one, you did very similar. The visitors, which is what the survivors are called, the survivors are dead. A gateway leaving to leave appears. There's always sure, the other team may have completed their objective, but you now have the opportunity to change your fate and pull out a win somehow. That's just pretty standard in asymmetrical games. I don't know how I feel about it here, though. I would need to see.
And I definitely hate.
It's nice that the busters
giant-
have. Yeah, it's nice that the busters have the opportunity to be able to still bust the ghost, but at the same time, I guess it'd be interesting to know, like, maybe the ghost still gets a bunch of points because they got 100% haunted, but then the busters can still, because there were times in Ghostbusters where the place that they were trying to protect got completely wrecked, but they still got the ghost.
And that's fair. Yeah. I think from a gameplay perspective, it'll be interesting. 90 seconds seems like 90 seconds is interesting. It seems like a long time for a ghost to somehow manage to, especially in what this game takes like 10 minutes
Yeah.
total. So 90 seconds is a long time. The other thing is he mentioned, Jordan, game designer, mentions in an earlier section of the stream back in that first game that the ghost achieving 100% haunt dispels the rifts. So
And that's
even if you have played perfectly, right? Let's say you have immaculately played as a ghost, you deserve this win on every level because you've kept all 3 of your rifts alive, or even just 2 of your rifts alive. Your rift just go away because you successfully haunted, and that's odd to me, because unless you're getting some kind of enhanced regen because your rooms, your whole building's haunted, I think that would be a mechanic that makes some amount of sense. Unless you're harder to catch now because you have some amount of sense. I have a little bit of nervousness about the way this mechanic works. We will need to see it in practice a little bit more. So
Yeah.
Jordan is trying to chase this guy, and so here's this. Here's Aaron. Joe's right here around the corner. We're on Jordan, and Thorn's gonna ult. And the ult one-shots Joe, Carell, and Jordan. So here's what I want to see. So we're gonna count here. So he's gonna drop, and we're gonna watch because nobody's helping him here.
Yeah.
Oh, now Aaron's gonna come over, and it is gonna go a lot faster. But that really wasn't that long to
Not really,
to
no.
go. No, it didn't seem like he was down very long. Oh, it was like, what, 15 seconds? I'm struggling. I feel like Jordan was kind of clutching on that PKE instead of just, pulling the trigger and swapping.
Yeah, he wanted to stun the ghost.
Yeah.
Stun.
Building fully haunted, ghost wins as the thing. So, destruction pristine, time played, match complete. You get some points. Even though they lost, they got some points. So,
I love that Jordan's face right here.
yeah, just, oh man.
It's me. It's like, man.
Needs to be a meme of the way it works. But, like, I do appreciate just looking at the HUD here. He's going for that stun. He goes through the wall. Obviously, the pulse can't go through the wall. They're all gonna group up on this ghost, which I guess the question is this gonna just be the norm, right? Is this how the end of every match is gonna be? Is just 4v1 madcap flinging particle beams around?
Yeah, probably most likely.
As a thing, ghost fully wins, but a couple of things on the HUD that I noticed. You've got your color meter here for the people, which I think indicates your slime amount. But you can see Aaron Macaroni has still deployed because he throws out that trap to be ready. And I think that that's interesting, that it's going to inform you that you've got a trap deployed by a person that you're working with in a similar situation. Joe here up the top, he goes from blue to yellow to warning. And so I think that there are some interesting elements in the HUD that we can break down as we learn a little bit more about them. But so that's the match that we went through. I have a couple more questions. We've been chatting for over an hour, and people are probably going to get bored. But something I did want to discuss here is what are our thoughts on the collectibles in the map while we play? Because it's not just the fungus. They're on the triumphs list, showed that there were essentially cipher kind of pages scattered throughout maps. Find all of them on a map. Find all of them on a map in one match. what is our concern as players that you're going to get somebody who's not playing the objective, they're playing the collectibles instead?
Yeah. I can see, and personally, I would get frustrated real quick with a teammate who is like, it's like, for example, like when playing Call of Duty, for example, when you have a teammate who is there specifically to do whatever they need to do just to earn their next weapon skin, and they're not playing the objective, it's extremely frustrating for me personally. But on that spectrum I was talking about earlier, I'm more towards the try-hard end of that spectrum. And so for me personally, that would be really annoying if that's all they're doing. So to me, I'd have to see how much it takes away from doing the objective. Because most of the time when we see him pick up that fungi, it's like, oh look, fungi, he picks it up.
Yeah, I mean, and we have an example.
But...
I'll turn this back on it never went away for you, but it was on for stream. We have an example right here where he's got 43 seconds. He just pops up from this big hit, right? And he gets cleared.
He goes
he turns and he grabs the fungi right behind him. Now, I will comment just on a aesthetic point of view. I like that this is draining down. I wish it phased out as he stands instead of just gone.
Yep.
Right? Like his vision is still kind of punch drunk, blurry a little bit. But it's interesting that, hello dog, you're very noisy in my microphone. But it's interesting to me that,
yeah,
I like the fact that he illustrates the risk of the PKE a couple of times here, where, at the end game, you're trying to hunt down that ghost constantly. And so having your PKE on cooldown is a big risk in order to get that stun off.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm hoping that, that's my, like, sure, the PKE seems overpowered, but at the same time, if it's a risk reward thing, But as for that animation we saw, I'm hoping it's just the fact that it's alpha.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it's alpha. I hope that it kind of fades out, because that was pretty jarring.
Yeah.
As a thing. Alrighty, well, that is the end of that match. I think we covered pretty much everything, unless there's anything else that we missed that we want to talk about.
I mean, the only last thing I would say is that match it's really interesting because that's really chaotic, and asymmetrical games are generally not chaotic, but I think it goes with the
theme.
The theme of Ghostbusters. So I don't know. We'll have to see how a chaotic asymmetric game goes.
Yeah, so I think that at the very end being chaotic it'll be kind of fun as a thing. I think it is in flavor. Those end fights are always kind of chaotic. The plan, they had a plan-ish when they walked up to the top of Central Park West and Shandor's Tower, and then next thing they know, they had to go nuts with crossing the streams and stuff. I will make the comment, I've made it in my reaction video, but I'll make it again, that I think that there is a huge missed opportunity in design space for no cross the streams mechanic. I think that should have been a thing. If it's not a thing and it needs to be a thing,
I agree.
some kind of thing. It's too pivotal to the way. I'm excited to see more equipment, and I'm excited to see some more ghosts and some information about the ghosts. And the one thing we got to remember as we watch the ghosts is we only saw what this one ghost could do. They are going to have multiple ghost types, so I think that'll be interesting to see how that works out. But anyway, we're gonna get on out of here. Thank you for joining us for this extended discussion of a Ghostbusters fan and an asymmetrical fan discuss Spirits Unleashed. We're both excited for it. Again, it launches on October the 18th. It is available for pre-order now on the Epic Games Store. as well as PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and Xbox. So be sure to pick that up. We'll both be playing. We'll see you in game, and for now, peace on Earth, Earthlings.